Boom. What's up? Just like that, I'm back. Can you believe it? Twice in one day? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm here because something has been on my mind for a while, and it was mentioned in one of our live streams before. We're talking about composting. And so I just want to bring that topic back up real quick because earlier I showed you all that I was harvesting seeds from my okra plants. And now that I have all of these dried seed pods, I was like, huh, what should I do with them? What shall I do with these little dried okra seed pods? Now, all the seeds are out. I'm shaking it. You don't hear anything, right? So that's a good way to double check to make sure I don't hear anything that you harvested all of your seeds out of your okra pod. This is what it sounds like if you haven't. Okay, so yeah, I don't hear anything, so I'm pretty sure that I did. Hello, whoever's in the house. I see two people. Talk to me. Let me know who you are. So what should I do with these afterwards? Now, a lot of people will tell you, and I agree, I guess, to make sure that whatever you put in your compost, you do not put something in there that has seeds in it. And the reason that for that is because you will start to grow plants. Hey, Suzette, nice to see you. I don't think you were in the one I did earlier, like literally a couple hours ago, if that, live stream. But I harvested okra seeds for the first time ever. I've grown okra for the first time ever this year. And so I'm excited about that. But I had some seed pods that were ready to harvest. So I took those off and I've been there. I only have two seed pods left that I have not harvested the seeds from. But so far, I have all of these, these pieces. And so what shall we do with the dried okra seed pods? And somebody had brought up in a live stream before, about composting, and I was like, that's a perfect way to use them. We should talk about composting and why and what it means. Why the heck should we do it, or should we? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? For of composting, what's the whole hype about, right? Because as a beginner gardener, number one, did not understand that, and I remember hearing that concept of composting when I was in college too. The first time I'd ever been introduced to it, and I had no idea what it meant. But I remember seeing it as a child on the farm, and I never asked, why do we do that? Why do we save all the food scraps? Why do we do that? And part of the reason was, hey, Melanie, welcome back. Nice to see you. One of the reasons for saving this food scraps is at the time, my grandparents had some hogs. So they used to put every last bit of the food scraps in a bucket, in these two white buckets. I never forget that white bucket. Oh my God, the sop bucket. Doesn't that sound disgusting? Sop, right? And honey, we took that bucket and poured it out and gave it to the hogs, and there'd be larvae in it, and all kinds of other things crawling around, flies everywhere. And so, but that's why they did it. They did it to feed the hogs. But I remember them also using it to and making a pile out of a compost pile. And it wasn't like, I don't feel like it was intentional. I remember my grandfather leaving. He had two plum trees, and he would just leave the plums on the ground. A lot of people would clean that stuff up because of flies and stuff like that. He was like, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that, because I asked him one time, should we clean that up? And he was like, no, let the outdoors take care of it, is what he used to say. So hey, Green Organic Love, welcome back. So composting, what is the whole purpose of it? What do we think, or what do we know that composting is about? Anybody have any ideas? What is composting? Again, for beginner gardeners that have no idea what composting is, everybody tell me what you think of when you hear the word compost or composting. Just comment in the chat there and let me know what you think of when you hear the words composting or compost. Green Organic Lug says she's still learning. Me too. Yep. Me too. But tell me what you think of. What have you heard? What are some things that it doesn't have to be right or wrong. It doesn't. This is here. This live is to help people understand it, especially beginners, understand composting. So everyone that is seasoned, that comes in the live, we want your help. We want your coaching because we're all still learning as well. Okay. Anybody? Suzette, Melanie. So the first thing I think of when I hear the word compost was nothing. When I first heard that, I didn't know what it meant for real. I knew it had something to do with food scraps, stuff that we throw away, but I didn't understand. And then even now, I'm still learning about it. So okay, great. We have some people commenting. So composting, the first thing you think of or what you know. Suzette says gathering scraps of food to elevate your soil. Perfect. Perfect. That's exactly what it is. It's crazy. I put my scraps in the ground, then they disappear. Yes. So they disappear one of two reasons, probably because they decomposed over time, or you put them in the ground and you realize somebody has, dug them up and ate them for themselves. That could be a reason as well. Um, to set you compost. Good. Me too. Me too. But definitely, that's all you're doing. And when I first heard of the concept of composting, I was like, really? Like, why would I want some stinky, smelly, decomposing food in my backyard? And why would I want to always like frequent that location? Because it's going to stink and it's going to smell and there are going to be tons of flies. So yeah, I was not completely bought into the concept of composting at first. um then I learned that, well, the reason why we do it and nature does it naturally is because it does build up our soil. What the heck does that mean, right? It adds nutrients back into the soil. So anytime we see stuff decomposing that isn't on pavement, okay, or a sidewalk, but is in the ground, on the grass, in the ground, and that's anything dead, creatures, leaves, fruit that's fallen to the ground that we never pick up, that rots on the ground. And eventually, what does it do? It decomposes. That's what's rotting. It's decomposing. And all of that organic matter, have you ever heard of that before? Goes back into the ground. Which is the soil that we use to plant, especially if you plant in the ground. Now, if can you still have the same effect when, as far as building up your soil, if you are using raised beds or container gardening, can you still compost? Yes, yes. And there are several different methods. Green Organic Love says that she doesn't smell it at all when it bag there, when it's back there, maybe. Okay. Suzette says I compost in a garden soil bag. Okay. Yeah, there are tons of different ways to compost. And I got you, Green Organic. So yeah, I think there's different ways you can do. I know for a fact there's different ways you can do it, and it's all about finding which way it is better or easier or works for you, whatever that means. So for instance, when I first started learning about composting, I understood that yes, I throw this stuff away in the trash anyway. And I believe in recycling, the three R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Do I consistently do it? Yes, as much as I possibly can and remember to, but I'm not like very anal about it. Okay, if that makes any sense. I'm not gonna say, oh my gosh, and dig out of the trash everything that can be reduced, reused, recycled, repurposed. I'm not gonna do that now. Sometimes I do with water bottles, Coke bottles, stuff like that when I have parties or yes, I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff in bulk, all these plastic cups that can be recycled, all this other stuff. I'm gonna make sure that happens on our daily. We buy a lot of water bottles. We have a lot of water bottles. So yes, I do have a green trash can that's only purposed for recycling items. So yes, I have that. Repurposing stuff, trying to figure out different ways. So um, one way is to compost in place. And there is a lady called, her name is Robbie, an older white lady on YouTube, Robbie, and is it Gary, her husband Gary? I can't think of the name of the channel, but she is a huge advocate of composting in place. And basically, that means dig a hole, bury the food scraps, cover it up right there. She uses a lot of containers in her garden, and she literally composts in place in containers. So if you want ideas about how to do that, is his name Gary? I'm pretty sure his name is Gary. Robbie, Robbie. And Gary, just YouTube, search that, and I'm sure she'll pop up. But she is a huge advocate of composting in place. Matter of fact, that is easier for me to do. When I first started composting, I thought I needed that three system setup. And so the first area you would put all of your organic matter in, and then once it breaks down, you would transfer it over to this one, and then you would transfer it to a third compartment. Um, and it be it's this is this the what by the time it reaches the third compartment, it's finished composting. You can use it in your garden. It takes a lot of like rotating and flipping and mixing up the compost, because again, composting only works if there's green matter, brown matter, and air. And so you would mix and turn and flip and all this other stuff, the compost, so it would become aerated. And then you would just keep doing that. And they even suggest that like every 3 days or so that you're doing that you're turning, flipping, whatever, the compost over, mixing it up, so you can get some air in there. And so the microorganisms can break down the compost. That wears me out just in itself, just trying to explain. And but it doesn't have to be that difficult. So and yes, green organic, she says, I don't have the space for 3 compartment breakdown. And you're right, me neither. Y'all see how big my backyard is? I mean, that big, right? And yes, I have a driveway, but I'm not sure if I want all that showing in my driveway. I got enough in my driveway now, and I'm gonna redo that next year. I don't know how, but I was trying to expand out into the driveway, expand my garden out that way using containers. And it worked, but I'm not necessarily, bought into the way it looks when I'm driving down my street. I don't know. That's just my thing. But, but yeah, that was just too much for me. And I was really excited about it at first, but I can't do it. And it's too much work. I have a lot of chronic pain as well. Hello, Backyard Gardening. Welcome. We're talking about composting, different ways to compost, and ideas and why do it. So please chime in if you don't mind. And that's success. That's one reason I do in a bag. I punch holes in the bag. I flip the bag and rotate the bag. Don't have to touch it. Yes, and that was another thing that grossed me out. Like, why would I want to touch decomposing food? And why would I want to smell it so much? Like, I don't want to smell it. And so yeah, I have like, it would just yeah, I couldn't take the smell. So then I was like, okay, well, I can do this whole just dig a hole and bury it thing. Yeah, I can do that. Instead of, and then it's the chemistry of everything that I got hung up on. So I was like, oh my gosh, you have to have 2 parts green to 1 part brown, or whatever. Let's see. I wrote it down. Yeah, 2 parts green to 1 part brown, or vice versa. I don't remember. But that freaked me out. So how do I know if I have 2 parts green and 1 part brown? And it's too much thinking. Like, it overwhelmed me. So when I first started, I made this, and I have a video about this earlier in my YouTube year, last year when I started, early November, December. And it's great. Like, it helps me to remember what I can compost. And that's another thing. I was like, uh, you can't compost everything, and people do things differently again. But there's just a lot of different ways you can do it. I will never ever compost meat or dairy products. I won't do that because people, one of the biggest concerns is attracting pests, and not just squirrels, but like stuff you don't want to run up on, like possums and raccoons and stuff like that. You don't want to foxes. Some of y'all living on islands and things and next to water, and you don't want to attract all that kind of stuff. So the idea is that if you are composting, that you do, and composting in place at least, you need to bury it in the soil. So dig it pretty deep, put some soil over top of it, or hay or something. Okay, so it kind of masks the scent. Coffee grounds is all that. Like, I love using coffee grounds in the compost. It's a brown, number one. Number two, it masks the smell of decomposing matter. So I always spread coffee grounds over top of my stuff, the greens. And so I'm hitting, two birds with one stone there. The composting in place, I had started saving coffee cans. And again, I don't have a lot of space in my garden, but if I wanted to, what I could do is, this has a cover, a lid, right? It literally has some coffee grounds in it. That's okay. Just leave them in there. But punch some holes in the bottom. Okay, just as many holes as you want. Keep the top on, but punch holes maybe in the top too, in the sides, all the way around this can. Because again, in order for composting to work the way it's supposed to, there needs to be some type of airflow. Okay, or it really will start to stink and attract all kinds of things. And flies are annoying, but you definitely don't want possums and coons stuff. You just want things to work the way it's supposed to. I'm not saying you won't have those things, depending on where you live, that you won't attract. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you're less likely to attract. And I have a trash can outside with my compost in it, no top on it. So I have had flies, but I don't have that trash can's never been tipped over with rodents trying to get in it or anything. Like, I've never had any trouble. It's been in that same spot. It is composting because, again, I fill it up, and it eventually, like over a few days, it falls down, right? So it is breaking down. The compost is active, and it's a hot compost. There's a such thing as a cold compost too, but we may or may not talk about that. But back to this composting in place. So if you want to, even in your garden, you can either set it on top or dig. I would recommend maybe even digging a hole, putting it in the raised bed, in the middle of the raised bed, or in the ground. If you're planting in the ground, put it in the middle of a row, or wherever you want. You got the holes in the bottom, you got the holes all the way around for aeration, but the holes in the bottom, even if you plant it, put it in a hole or just set it there, whatever you want to do. I don't know. I would probably put it in a hole. So like up to here, maybe an inch or two, maybe 2 inches in the ground. That way it'll stay. So when the weather gets crazy and the wind starts blowing, you don't have to worry about it coming out or tip it over or whatever. But if you have some food scraps, put in some soil, just a little bit to cover the bottom. Put in your food scraps, cover it a little bit with soil or coffee grounds. Close it, Okay, so now you're preventing the flies from laying eggs, maybe. I don't know. It depends on how big your holes are, I guess. But it's sealed, it's covered, and it's leaching into the ground because you poked these holes in the bottom of the can. So for people like me that has small spaces to garden in, doesn't have a lot of room, this might be an option. Just repurposing a coffee ground can or any container. Okay. Um, yeah, you can do it that way. Okay. Just make sure you have it covered. And again, that lady that I was talking about, Robbie, she is a master at composting in place. But it's not hard to do. Not hard to do at all. Hey, Diddy, welcome back. I am talking about composting if you haven't figured that out already. So we just want to learn from each other ideas. A lot of people are beginners. I'm a beginner at composting, a beginner at everything. And so we're just trying to help each other understand what composting is, what the benefits are for composting, any composting ideas for folks that don't have a lot of space to even garden in, so much less composting. What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? Your experience would be more than appreciated. Just comment in the chat. And let's see. Let's see. Okay, you watched the video I had on this. Yeah. So things that are compost, nitrogen. So apparently the compost needs nitrogen item and carbon items, or those greens and those browns. Anything that you collect from your kitchen that isn't coffee grounds or eggs, it pretty much is a green. So lettuce scraps, peels, banana peels, apple peelings, your fruit peelings, those are considered greens. Okay. Veggie peels, rinds, watermelon rinds, honeydew rinds, and things like that. Grass clippings. So when you're clipping your grass, whoever mows your grass for you, just ask them if they can to bag up your grass clippings, and you can use those as greens. And it's actually a great idea to go ahead and save those, like bag them up in big trash bags. Now, the grass clippings will break down, and I did this last year, and again, if you watch that composting playlist that I have, you'll see. But grass clippings smell like poo, right? When they break down. Okay, cows eat grass, and what do cows smell like? Much less their poo. Okay, it smells just like that. So it's not a very pleasant smell. It smells just like manure. Okay, when it breaks down. But I get it. I understand, and I kind of that aroma was a little bit refreshing to me. I know this is weird, but that's only because I grew up on a farm and I'm from the country, and I really do miss that smell sometimes. It's just me. Um, but yeah, let me see what Suzette. Before I go on with the what to compost. Seth had mentioned composting in a bag. So I said a can or a container. A bag would be considered a container or whatever, but you want it to be a sturdy one, I guess, that it doesn't rip apart, because yard bags or plastic bags will break down after a while. So just be prepared for that. Seth, what type of bag are you using? Did you mention that already? And she doesn't put meat in her bag either. I wouldn't recommend putting dairy. Again, that just attracts unwanted pests. You already don't want the coons and the raccoons and the possums and stuff after it. So you definitely don't want all that other stuff. Hey, Food Forest, welcome. We're talking about composting, and you are very familiar with this. I know you are. And so for people that are beginners that don't understand what the hype is about composting, why do we do it? What does it do for our soil? What does it do for us as gardeners? If you don't mind sharing some of your expertise with us, okay, because he is a seasoned gardener, homesteader, food forest developer. So y'all please look out for food forest comments for me, okay? uh and let's see, let me back it up a little bit. um Thank you, Backyard Gardener. He says good information. Thank you so much. just trying to learn from you all, but also just communicate what I know too. Cardboard, yes. Okay, so you use a cardboard paper bag. Cardboard or paper bags are pretty dope actually. Like I prefer that over plastic containers. Plastic containers hold all the moisture in, so it doesn't matter if you like if I'm composting and I do use reuse those salad containers. You know when you buy baby greens or whatever from the store and those containers once they empty I do use that sometimes to put in my compost, but you got to take them out within 3 days or so because the moisture stays in, and if I had the lid on, which I typically do because I don't want stuff flying around, but it the juices sap out and it starts to smell and it molds as well. Brown paper bags, I would put banana peel, anything in there that I wanted to, and it might get a little wet on the bag at the bottom, but it dries. It wets and dries. I've seen that, and I had it in the house. I didn't have it outside. I had it in the house on the counter. I put a little napkin underneath it just in case there was stuff that was leaky or whatever, but it dried and got wet. Dry, got wet. Just a little moisture from the food. But I think brown paper bags are great. Um, let's see. I use my old soil bags. Okay, so she used her old soil. That's perfect too. Gardening in your soil bags is great. Instead of dumping that 2 cubic foot bag of soil out, if you have somehow how you can support that bag sitting up, plant you some seeds in that. A seed or two in that bag and watch your plant grow in that bag. Just poke some holes in that bag all the way around, especially at the bottom, so there's drainage. And you golden, you golden. I love that. Um, don't have any critters. Keep in a plastic basket. Okay, so Suzette says she doesn't have any critters. I don't either. I really don't see them. I've never had a problem with my compost trash can being turned over. And I did with that trash can, I drilled holes all the way around it, all the way around the trash can, all in the bottom of the trash can again. So there is drainage and there's aeration. Okay. So it can work the way it wants. And I left it open. I don't have a top on my trash can. That top blew away in a storm somehow or somewhere. I don't know. I never found it. And I never bought another trash can top either. But it's working fine. It's working fine. Um let's see. But nitrogen. So let's get back to the things that you can compost. These are just ideas. This isn't everything. But I said veggie peels, rinds, grass clippings, garden waste. So a lot of people say, if you have plants and stuff, you pulled out or whatever, as long as there's no disease on them, you can compost those. If there is disease on the leaves or on the plants, if you have a hot compost, just make sure it's hot enough. And I think hot enough is like 125 to 140 degrees. Correct me if I'm wrong, Food Forest. A set, if you know what hot compost, like the temperature usually get, I think it's like 125 to 140 degrees. And you and so it should be hot enough to kill the disease so that you don't basically rebirth that disease in your soil. So like your soil isn't tainted, your compost isn't tainted when you're ready to use it. So you want to make sure that if you put plants in there that are diseased, that you have a hot compost so it can break it down, kill everything, so it won't be in your soil for next year. I don't ever compost things that are diseased, so I don't know if it works or not. I haven't tried that, but I just don't put diseased stuff in my compost. I always put it in the trash can or the food yard waste trash for pickup. So plant a tree on top after the compost has been broken down by microbes. He said plant a tree. And one thing that I do think happened this year, I put soil as well as compost food scraps in those tires that I have in my backyard, both of them. Then I put soil, like almost a whole 2 cubic. I mean, it probably was 2 cubic foot bag of soil in the tires on top of the compost. So the compost was on the bottom, the soil, and then I planted seeds. What I think happened was, and Food Force, maybe you can help me with this, a set, maybe DD, um, is that as the compost was breaking down, it might have been too hot for the plant. And so as the plant grew and the roots went, spread and maybe even went down further in the soil, it kind of burned up my plant. I'm not like, yeah, so it's, if it's not fully composted, you probably shouldn't use the compost. Then I've seen videos where people are using unfinished compost. I don't know. I don't know the difference. Let's see what people are saying. Plant a tree, okay. Don't use tires, very toxic. Well, everybody has their opinions about that as well. I grew up with that, seeing that, and that's why I didn't think twice about it. I did do some research though before I decided, and I did decide to use tires. So that's my choice. But yes, I have heard that some people do not like that idea at all, and that's fine. Whatever works for you, whatever works for you. I did that with my pomegranate tree. It's doing really, really good. So you planted a pomegranate tree in a soil bag, or a bag of soil, and it's doing well. Yes, the set says it can burn it and kill it. I think that's what happened. I had two squash plants, and then I got squash bugs too. So they like wreaked havoc on every single squash plant. My pumpkins, everything was just gone after they came through. Pour some water on the hot compost near plants. Yes, so we had talked about composting in place, either next to plants, or but I planted directly. I planted the seed directly. I think really as the plant was growing, the root system was growing, it kind of burnt up the root system, and it just became um crazy. Victory begins in the garden. Welcome. So I'm glad you're here. I don't think we've met. So welcome to the live stream, and compost and warm tower and raised beds. Yes, so that's what it started out as. I put red wiggler worms in those towers, and soil and compost. And then I was like, wonder what would happen if I just made sure that all of that was buried real good as I feed my worms, and then, you know, plant seeds on top of it. So the worms are in there. I think the worms are still there. I haven't checked it in a while, but the soil has definitely went down in the tire mound that I had over by the fence. It has went down drastically. And that's where I had most of the worms in the compost in. So that might have been what happened as well. I'm not sure. Some plants are very sensitive, so it's possible. I agree. Um, let's see. Oh, you planted your pomegranate in your compost pile, and it's doing well. Yeah, and again, people do dig holes and compost, or whatever around their trees. They feed their trees that way. So I agree. I haven't made up my mind about in my experience. I've never, other than planting those two plants in the tires with the compost, I've never had any other experience composting in place with seeds in the compost. Now, when I tried my best this year not to put seeds in my compost. So if I was composting like tomatoes, scraps, or peppers, or squash, or whatever, watermelon, I made sure the seeds were not in there, and put them in there because I didn't want a bunch of plants popping up in my compost. It's in a trash can. Um, and I didn't need the plants either. So, but I mean, a lot of this is just a test. Figure it out. It's an experiment. Figure out what works for you, what your experience is, and then nothing I do do I consider to be the right way. Um, I have watched several. I mean, thousands and thousands of videos. I mean, literally, like I immersed myself in gardening videos this past year. Like, and I've learned a lot, and I'm learning a lot as I'm doing stuff. And everything that has happened to somebody else in the garden. So I feel like affirmed that I'm not the only one that's having this experience. And number two, though, it is kind of cool to see, just what will happen with certain things. I've never gardened in plastic bags before until this year, and it works great. Gardening in plastic bags. Anything from the actual seed or the actual plastic bag that the soil has come in to using reusable grocery bags, so to plant potatoes in. So I've tried a little bit of everything, and again, I just believe in repurposing and reusing, using what you have to start gardening, or to continue to garden. You don't have to go out and buy all the stuff that you see people buy. If you just want to get started, or if you just want to be more economical for yourself, you should do that, and figure out what works for you. um Food Forest Permaculture says if the compost is in 5-inch layers, the green and brown, the microbes in the summer will make soil in a month. Okay. Okay. And maybe that's, let's see. If the compost is in 5-inch layers, because it will pretty much be a hot compost and just break down, especially because it's summer, it's hot anyway, and it'll help with the process. I believe that, because that the compost that I have in the trash can outside, I mean, it didn't take no time for it to break down. Maybe 2 or 3 months, and it was, I mean, I was like, that's when I noticed the huge drop. I mean, it was all the way full to the very, very top, and then before I knew it, it was only half full. So I was like, huh. Well, the only issue I have with the trash can out there is I didn't put a door or cut out a door on the trash can to get the finished compost out. So I got to figure out how to do that, because I don't think. Um, so okay. Victory begins in the garden says you need to make sure there's a carbon ratio. Yes, and I just talked about the ratios, and I learned the first time I attempted to compost was in a container, in a like a one of those storage bins, and I did number one, did not poke holes in the bin, so that was screw up number one. Screw up number two, it was over saturated. The top that I had on it, I did have a lid on it, but the holes were too big, so when it rained, a lot of rainwater got in, and then after that I couldn't recover. Everybody was like, throw in browns, throw in your paper and your coffee grounds and your cardboard, and the moisture, it'll even it out, and then you won't stink anymore. And I just could not recover. It just turned into mush, and it was disgusting, and it grossed me out, and there were flies, and it was just a complete fail. And people say that in their videos, that you cannot fail making compost. Well, I don't believe that to be true. I think you can if you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't understand the concept of browns and greens, like you need both of them and air to compost. And so yeah, I messed up really, really bad the first time. Have to go and process my salmon for my winter food fish. Been a pleasure to be here. Okay, bye, Food Forest. Thank you for tuning in. And Suzette says compost tea is a good way to feed your garden, but ratio with water. Yes, compost tea is amazing. That's a whole nother concept. But you and people have bubblers, and to again with that aeration, it's not just composting and sitting water. I've seen people do that too. But most people have those bubbler thingies, and it helps again aerate the water and the whole compost, so you have compost tea. And but if you poke the holes, like I said, in the bottom of this can, as you are, add your scraps, your dirt, a little bit of moisture. You always want to add a little bit of moisture because that helps but it'll seep out, as you have it in the ground, and so you're feeding technically compost tea to your ground. But I understand what you're talking about, actually making the having the gallon or 5 gallons or so of water. Also, I showed where I did make somewhat of a compost tea using banana peels. I just filled up an old juice jug and put 1 or 2 banana peels in it, let it set for 7 days, and fed my plants that way. So that's another thing. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can do this, but you just need to pick one and then that works for you and go for it that way. Uh, let's see, Dee. I think that you only fail if you try to compost only one way. There's always an adjustment that can be made to get your compost to break down. Yes, ma'am. I agree indeed. Other nitrogen or other greens that you can use to compost. Hay, hair, which I guess it said it's the video that I watched was it said it was a nitrogen, but I'm like, isn't I don't know, whatever. I was thinking more of a carbon, but it said it was a nitrogen. Bread and sod. And then the browns, bark or wood chips, eggs, eggshells, leaves. Sometimes people put whole eggs in the. I've seen videos where people compost and they also fertilize their plants by putting in a banana peel and a whole egg, and that's all they use the whole year to fertilize their plant. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But eggshells, leaves, twigs, newspaper. These are the browns. Cardboard. I have a video called Toilet Paper Rolls in My Compost. I'm still saving all of my toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls. Cardboard, napkins, straw, peanut shells. So if you like tea bags, rope, mushrooms. I don't know if I want to put mushrooms in my compost though. I don't like mushrooms are starting to pop out in my wood chips now and in some of the bag soil now. And I don't like it. I don't like mushrooms everywhere. Number one, I don't know if I can eat them because I haven't done that much research on mushrooms. Number two, I just feel like why are you there? Like you in my way, you taking up space, I'm gonna smash you. Anyway, walking around the garden. So like that mushrooms are a little annoying to me in the garden right now, just because I don't use them. And peat moss, coffee grounds. Again, I don't put meat or dairy products in my compost. I personally don't. And then the whole point again, I was trying to show you all that earlier I did a live and I had harvested seeds for my okra plant. So I have, these left over from after I've harvested seeds from my okra. So this is one okra that I pulled apart and harvested the seeds from. So, there's another one. And so no seeds, but this is completely compostable. Why not? It's a brown. So you can use so much stuff from around your garden to help you compost. I mean, to go ahead and get your compost started. You don't have to have or buy things to do that. We throw away so much stuff in the trash, and it's just about retraining your brain and being aware to go ahead and compost your stuff that you typically throw away anyway. Yes, hair is organic matter, so it will break down. Yes, I take the hair out of my brush all the time, or my comb. Whenever I decide to use a comb on this crazy mess. But yes, I definitely do that. And Four Horns is in the house. Hey, how you doing? Has anyone mentioned David the Good's book, Compost Everything? Nope. So there's another resource. Mushrooms are fungus. Yes, they are. And they're annoying fungus because I just don't want them around and they pop up everywhere. And to said you don't do your hair because do you have locks? I think we established that one time. Was it you that had told me you had locks? So you don't have a lot of hair to compost, which is understandable. But yeah, Other ways you can compost: composting in place, composting in plastic bags or paper bags, composting outside. People use that three-stage area system. Just hair twist. Okay. Composting. What are some other ways I've seen people do it? Trenching. So again, all that is just digging a trench, composting the trench, and covering it up. Okay. I've seen that, and I've done that before. Um, um, Joe. Um, this is last name start with a P. Oh my God, Joe. I'm seeing it. I just can't say it. Joe. Y'all help me out. Does anybody know Joe? White guy, middle aged with glasses. That could be anybody, right, on YouTube. Joe. Let me see if I can find his name on my subscription list. Oh, Joe. Where are you, Joe? Joe. Polyak. I think that's it. I think you're right. He composts in place in his raised beds. And I've never seen that before, quite like he does it and how he does it. So I actually want to go back. I want to do that next year, and I'm going to go back and study his video. Joe, where you go? Polichic, um, Joe. Let's see if he pops up here. Ooh, that didn't work. I didn't spell it right. Hold on, y'all. I really want to get it right so y'all can try to go find him. Joe, where are you, Joe? I think that's his name. Did he change his channel name? Because he's not coming up under that name. Let me see if I can scroll by real quick and find him. Oh, I'm subscribed to so many people. Hidden Harvest Grow Lights, Bubble Beats, Food Forest Permaculture, The City's Dead, Butterflies Humming Garden. Ooh, Supreme Family Garden, Cedarholic, Diva Jones 03. There he is. Joe. Pacholic. Listen, I'm gonna type it right now. Joe in the I'm typing it in the chat so y'all can see how to spell it. But he composts in place in his raised beds. And so if y'all want an idea of what that looked like, again, that's perfect for people that do not have a lot of garden space anyway, much less space to compost. So he has his little system that works really well for him. And so if you want to check that out, that's his name and that's his channel name. Okay. And this is, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to show you his face. Let me see if I can go back and find him again. There he is. Okay. Ugh. Let's see. Home. Let me try. I'm trying to make his face big. Well, I can't make it, but this is what his page look like. There he is. Y'all see him? Oh shoot. I'm doing all kinds of things, y'all. Can't get myself together here. Okay, so that's him. So go check him out. Go check him out if y'all are interested in that. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's him. So I would recommend. Oh, Robbie. I told y'all about Robbie. I might as well look her up too. I think her name was Robbie. And her husband Gary. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Robbie and Gary. I think. Um, her and her husband both have a garden, and they both do videos. And I think they shared. There she is. Yep, Robbie and Gary. Yeah, yeah, Robbie and Gary. So that's their channel. She is the master of composting in place. So if you all want to check her out, please do. If you want other ideas about how to compost in place. So this is like a no, like hardly any labor, just letting it be, layering your compost, um, burying it and walking away basically. Okay. So Robbie and Gary. I'm gonna type her. Oh, are y'all there? I'm sorry. It's oh, no, no, no.